Hey guys, Tom here. Just a quick cover note on this one to say that please bear with Sam's audio for the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Although he thinks he's on his way to the Hall of Fame of podcasts, if you don't turn your mic on, it's going to sound pretty shit. So stick with it for 2 minutes and then he turns it back on, so everything's okay. I hope you enjoy the pod.
Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Sam Williams.
Hello.
And Sir Bruce Fitzpatrick.
G'day.
As always, you can get in touch with us at Cookie Jar Golf on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Isn't that right, Sam?
And YouTube. Glad I didn't have to correct you this week.
We've got all of 3 videos on, but it's growing by the day.
It's a trilogy, soon to become a quartet.
I thought there was only 2, so that's bit of bonus material.
Snippet Yarwoods thing, it's not much of an event now. It's more of a still with a soundbite, but it's on YouTube. It classes as a trilogy in my book, so one more and we get to the magic 4.
So let's start with the obvious. How do we think about the golf on the weekend? I wasn't interested. I wasn't entertained, I felt. During that. I felt entertained.
Think pauses with the weather and look, I mean, I think there's a couple of interesting stories to take away from the weekend, wasn't there? I think DJ winning, even though he seems to have been under a rock for a long time, he hasn't really looked in contention, to me at least, in major events. And I know he's had some kind of blistering good days, like last year's Masters final day. But DJ coming through and winning, so I think that's worthy of note. Putter change, clearly some stuff going on in the bag there, and so that's cool. Will Gordon was a cool story. But yeah, like you say, I thought course actually didn't look too bad. Course looked quite interesting as well, and interesting seeing it without the spectators. I don't know what you guys thought on that, but
I think the courses look better on TV without the grandstands. I feel like the tournaments play better because they don't have this ability to just spank it into the stands.
Yeah,
or when they miss miles right or left, they're not in trampled down rough, and life becomes easier for them. I think you're getting a more real view of golf without the spectators.
Yeah, I mean, I've not watched much live golf since it's been back, to be honest. So perhaps I'm not the best judge of it, but it would be interesting to see with maybe some of the groups that aren't playing as well. Obviously, there's a sort of coverage bias in that they're going to cover the groups that are near the top of the leaderboard and the players who are playing the best. But it would be interesting to see if some of the guys who were struggling were, hitting it all over the place and maybe losing the odd ball that they would normally find, or hitting it into spots where they'd normally, as you say, Tom, would be on some trampled down spectator area and have a pretty clean shot. And as a result of the spectators not being there, they're now facing some pretty chewy, awkward lies. Yeah, I'm sure that'll all come out in the wash over the next few weeks and months as they continue to play these events without spectators. But yeah, I mean, to me, TPC River Highlands didn't look like the most interesting of courses.
So I thought the 15th was quite a good hole there. I think it was, in lieu of railroad sleepers around the water hazards and all the tricked up little pop bunkering around the greens like Harbour Town, the Pete Dye commentary seemed to wane somewhat, I thought, on the commentary anyway last weekend. But I did think there were some really cool looking holes. The 15th did stick in my mind. So the sort of sub 300 yard par 4 they played, where I saw Rory just scream like a 3 or a 5 wood on there on the first day to about 10 feet, did genuinely provide quite a bit of excitement. People going in the water, people kind of trying to play for that front right edge of the green and then having to chip across a sort of, Tom, I know you're a big fan of it, but a Beerit style green.
What on earth is the Beerit style green?
Oh, well, you got to love it. You got to love a green that's got a
nerdy, very nerdy. This, and I'm not an expert. Tom's a real expert on template holes. You should let him answer this.
I know at least 3, but a Beerit's hole is basically you can imagine a single tier green from front to back that's exactly plain and level, and then right in the middle of that green, running perpendicular to play, is a huge dip. and then coming back up to the original level.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's essentially how you can use it as two different greens, like a front and a
Right.
back.
Yeah.
But be able to have a pin placement in the middle, but they don't use it on tour.
Okay, so it has like a trench,
in
essentially, a trench
yeah,
in the middle.
So you know North Berwick West?
Everybody knows North Berwick West.
What,
played North Berwick West.
I played North Berwick. I've not. Is North Berwick West another one of those? Well, yeah, the East, of course, is the main one. I'm guessing, isn't it? Yeah.
North Berwick West is the course. So that is the course that's got.
Who calls it North Berwick West though? People just call it North Berwick.
Okay, let's not get bogged down.
God, the semantics here are just.
Hell, and just doing business with you on this stuff. I mean, it's like dealing with a child. We should probably have like sort of entry level pods that Bruce can contribute on, and then some of the more advanced topic we can bring specialists in.
Well, okay. Sorry, as an analogy there, who says, "Yeah, I played the St Andrews Links old course." It's not. No, you just played the old. You just played the old course.
Oh,
right.
I just played the old course. But yeah, please go on and tell me about North.
So if I go on North Berwick Golf Club,
by that thought process, should we just call it the West?
No, we'll call it North Berwick because we're dealing with Luddites on this pod. But if we talk about North Berwick, there's that green. It's on the back nine. You're going to know the hole and number, and I won't know exactly. Huge dip in the middle. So that's arguably a Beerit style green.
I know it is.
All of these things come from essentially template golf holes, which I think are big in America. Obviously, people like CB McDonald and Seth Rayner use them a lot. I wonder if that was used as a sort of a preservation tactic for golden age course architecture. But I think we're going down somewhat of a rabbit warren because we don't really talk about this stuff that much certainly in the UK, but you've got things like the road hole, the punch bowl green, the switchback, the Redan, things of these things. And really they're a foreign currency, to be honest with you, in the UK, if you started throwing this around even with well-versed people. But essentially you're dealing with a multi-tiered green, or certainly a green with a dip and a hollow in. So when you've got ridges in, it just adds so much complexity, particularly when you're only playing an approach shot from 40 yards or so. And I thought that was quite interesting, and it did get me thinking about cool short par fours and their place in the game.
Before we jump on that, I mean, I have always had a huge problem with like the way the PGA Tour deals with risk reward holes and what they call risk reward holes. And I genuinely thought that hole was brilliant because it had a difficult green. It had water all down the left if you decided to carry that far. If you didn't decide to carry that far, you just had an enormous layup, and it was the easiest four in the world if you wanted to play it as a four. But it was a really nice little hole. And I think Dustin on that last day coming down the stretch, he has hit a missile left, and it's pitched in the hazard, like we're beyond the hazard line, and just somehow on a bank stayed there. It's just unbelievable. Socks off, in he goes.
Well, Scott Fawcett put up some interesting stats on that, I think, actually saying that basically that strip of rough on the left-hand side of 15 made all the difference in terms of presenting players with a strategic choice, because I think that rough held up like 52 golf balls or something that, if it had been a shaved bank, those 52 balls obviously would have ended in the water. So I think he was suggesting, I might butcher this, but I think he was suggesting that if you took out that strip of rough, basically everyone would lay up because of the severity of the contours and, how difficult it would be to hit that green. It would just make it wouldn't kind of be mathematically correct.
And it got disproportionately heated on Twitter, I seem to remember, with, which I think for a sort of a 1 meter strip of rough on the left-hand side of a short par four probably was not warranted when there's bigger fish to fry in the world.
There goes our hopes of getting Scott on the pod next week then.
No. I think from his
adversaries.
I think, I think NLU was sort of really sort of vehemently opposed to having that there and felt like it should be more punishing. And I think Scott was absolutely spot on in his diagnoses there. So, but short par fours nonetheless, their place in the game, and we had a absolute ton of good and tremendously woke golf course architects on Instagram and Twitter that were coming in with some holes, which I thought was quite interesting. And
what were the common themes coming in?
Well, A couple of people were throwing in shouts at like 380, 390, and I was like, that's a little long, actually. I'm not sure I would put this.
I don't know what your club head
drive.
speed is, sir, but
I didn't know.
I'm driving a 5-wood to that one, please.
I didn't know whether that was for just sort of, but people were assuring me that it plays downwind and it's hard and firm and all that sort of good stuff.
We had one entry from good friend Will Dooson about the par 3 11th at St Andrews, which has often been called the shortest par 5 in golf, and that's definitely a very good pick, isn't it? I mean, yeah,
there were some good ones. So the notable standouts: 12 Old Course, Sunningdale's. People seem to list. I didn't even know there was 14 par 4s on Sunningdale Old, but I think we must have had about 14 holes on Sunny D that came through. And the real standout was 6th at Deal. Now, I've not played Deal, but that stood out. I think more than anything, we had people who'd written articles about it. It came into us. The one I wanted a major on, I think, was probably 12 because I just think that's a fantastic short par 4 in golf.
St Andrews, sorry.
Yeah,
the Old Course, I should say.
St Andrews Old Links, St Andrews Link Trust, I believe.
Yeah.
Old Course. It's just a very well balanced short par 4. Whereas you look at maybe River Highlands one, I think we'd probably all have a smash at it. It's a huge green. It's genuinely impossible to hold that green on the 12th. I mean, you've played it tons, haven't you, Bruce, from uni days?
And there's an element of luck with it as well, I would say. There's an element of luck because the bunkering right down the center of the hole, basically there's a huge bunker that is just short of the green, that is like basically the center line of the fairway as well, that really you should be aiming at. And I guess in the sort of the current trend of golf strategy, the likes of Scott Fawcett, etc., would say you just aim at that and accept that your chances of hitting it are very, very small. But if you do go in it, it's really, really hard to get the ball anywhere close to the pin or even on the green. So if you try and go up the right or the left of it, well, then you're flirting with like gorse bushes. As you say, it's just a really good short par 4 that gives you if you hit a decent shot and you get a little bit of luck, or rather you hit a decent shot and you don't get unlucky, then you've got a great birdie chance or maybe even an eagle putt.
I think the conclusion we reached from the long-ranging debates I had with people and talking to a lot of listeners was really the essence of a really good short par 4 is one whereby you've got everything available on the card, a 2, 3, 4, 5 or a 6, really, in terms of where you come at. And obviously you don't go into longer comparisons of par 4s at 400 plus with 2 legitimately on the menu. And very often it's a 4 or 5 you're playing for. Yeah. So I just thought the topic was quite interesting and something topical to take away.
What's quite interesting, I feel, is that how the sort of mindset of the whole thing changes depending on the par. So I'd say everybody in golf loves a decent, 280, 290 par 4, because it does offer a whole ton of stuff. There's not many people that are arguing that they just absolutely love a 240-yard par 3. And essentially, you could argue they're roughly the same thing. I mean, apart from the fact you're expected to shoot one less.
Well, yeah, I guess it's the expectation is everything, really, as you say, Tom. I think the key with a short hole is maybe not just to, you want to balance the risk and reward, essentially. You want to give people a chance to make up a shot, but know that if they get it wrong, they're not just going to be walking off with a par. And I think there are plenty of short holes we can think of out there, which are 280, 290, and there's really there's
no penalty if you exactly. If you pull it, if you miss the green, it's still going to be a maximum, which I think really that would be most of the time when you play at River Highlands, because the greens wouldn't be like glass and the pin wouldn't be cut a foot from the left edge of the green by water. So people, probably accept that you might make 2, but you've probably got a fairly benign 4 as well.
Whereas I think
good ones are like 12 is a great example where, I've made double there from being too greedy off the tee, and actually you can hit 8 iron, and you can walk off with a simple 4 all day long.
Yeah, and I think that choice is absolutely crucial to having a successful short par 4. I think to go back to the longer par 3, obviously, there's an expectation in the golfer's mind that they should be making 3, but it's very unlikely that you're going to find a 240-yard par 3 that hasn't got a really generous green, because you're obviously expecting, or the architect is expecting you to take that green on and to try and hit it. And I'm certainly speaking to my own experience of all the long sort of 220 plus par 3s I've played. The greens have been pretty generous to reflect the fact that if you're going in with 4, 3, 2 iron, hybrid, wood, or whatever, you're going to have a much bigger landing spot. And I think it's actually why, our 13th hole at Blackwell is such a brutal hole, is because that's a 190-yard shot downhill to a green that is so unbelievably shallow in terms of its depth, and there's just no margin for error. And that's rare, really, amongst
I mean, I'm
par
just flipping
threes.
through. I'm just flipping through, and it's a bit narcissistic. But the 15th at Atlanta Athletic Club just pulled a. Funny enough, had the yardage book in the drawer. Just pulled that out. 15th is a really good example there. So when they went through that phase of tiger proofing courses, they created a tee right on the back for the US Open, if you recall, and they were trying to create a par 3 hole where they were going to force Tiger to pull driver. And he openly said to the media at the time, if you create the hole and the conditions don't make it a feasible 1 shot and 2 putts, I will play it as a par 4. I'll quite comfortably do that. And that's a mature golfing head that's thinking this is about getting round in the fewest strokes possible, and not necessarily about keeping pace with the concept of par as
or playing regulation golf. Yeah,
exactly. So,
and I think all good architects realise that you've got to build in a generous landing area, really, for the shot that your typical golfer is going to be hitting off that tee. And if you're hitting a long iron, then a green that's shallow or really narrow and doesn't allow any more than a sort of 8-yard miss is going to be way too penal. So,
but going on to picking up on Sam's point, I mean, we've all, when you guys were younger and you were playing a lot of golf when you were younger, and when I started playing golf, you play with the old boys that can't hit the ball as far as you can, but they just seem to just score better. It's because they have a better understanding of their game, and it's that sort of thing where, like Sam says, some of these boys with par 3s, they're like, I'm not going for the green. I'm just going to nod it on, chip it up. I've got a putt for par. Might not get it. Might get it. And invariably, in the beginning, a lot of these boys are scoring really well because they just manage their own game. And actually, for us, I mean, certainly for me, I mean, Sam rips me apart all the time. Like, if I could manage my own game better, I'd be a much better golfer. But I've got the ego problem. I just want to spank everything and play like the tour. I play like pricks. So there's a difference.
Moving us on slightly, another thing I took away from the weekend, I'd welcome your thoughts on this one. Changing a putter is like, I don't know. I can only liken it for some golfers as having, like, Fast and the Furious, where you've got that kind of NOS button that they used to be able to press, and it made the car just go into a different gear all of a sudden. I can't help but feel. Do you remember it? They press that button, and I think it was
can I get some nitrous oxide on these greens?
I've got a feeling that changing putter for DJ has had that effect to his game. He hasn't really been in contention massively for a best part of a year.
What's it? His first win since early months of 2019? I mean, obviously it's
I think so.
skewed
He's
a
won
little
every
bit,
year
but
on tour, hasn't he? So he's won every year he's been on tour since 2008. He's now equaled Tiger. I think it's Tiger's record as most wins since 2008. But he hasn't looked like he's going to. I mean, he's really looked a little vacant, I've thought, at times, really, in the last year. He's stuck a different flat stick in, and
But don't you think changing a flat stick like smacks of desperation?
No, actually, I wouldn't say so. I think for a lot of players, it's probably the low-hanging fruit or the path of least resistance. It's like you could, instead of going and fixing your mechanics or your setup or trying to, alter your mindset with putting, if you could just go and change your putter and all of the rest of it takes care of itself, and all of a sudden you get a really good performance benefit, then why would you not do that?
I would flip that another way, though. So one of our co-host Cal is not on the pod today. He's having some well-earned R&R after a busy few weeks. He's got I'll embellish it. He's got circa 50 putters in his closet downstairs. It's like Aladdin's cave down there. He's now gone down a rabbit warren where he's changing putters really, really frequently. there is a case where I think there's a fine balance between changing a putter because it feels like it gives you a new gear, because there's always that fix, isn't there? Like, I mean, I'll pull something out, have a putt with it. I'll try a friend's putter. I'll putt with that for a few, on the practice green. I'll be like, oh, hold a few. And then all of a sudden it's giving you something to get over what was probably just a confidence issue to begin with. And then that becomes sort of like a constant fix where you then start changing putter more often than you need. And I think then that almost probably in turn makes the problem worse in the long term. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think it varies a lot player to player. I mean, when I look at my dad, for instance, like when my dad changes putter, I know the next few rounds he's going to be putting the lights out. That's just his quirk, I guess. For me, though, I've stuck with the same putter since I was 12, 13, and whenever I've tried to change it, I've putted horrifically. So maybe it's just an individual thing. I remember hearing Cameron McCormick say that, like, a lot of the players he works with, he just say if they're struggling with their confidence or their technique and everything else is broadly okay, but they're not holding the putts they should. If he just switches them in a putter that broadly fits their stroke, they can get some pretty good results with it. And obviously the key sort of counterpoint to that would probably be Jordan Spieth, although he has changed his putter in the past. But yeah, if it worked for the individual, like, why not? I mean, I probably wouldn't go to the extent that Cal goes to, because above all, having 30 odd putters costing a decent whack each is probably prohibitively expensive. But
I think he put some on eBay, and he can probably start signing the head covers on a few if we've got any listeners that want to buy them. But you're in the Scotty Newport world, aren't you? I know that I should preface this with it's not an ad, but you're a Scotty Newport putter,
yeah. I think I've just always had this
and Mills, your
toe hang kind of thing.
Your name as well.
And Newport,
and
2.0.
Of the people I see, people who have Scotty Newports invariably don't change putters. Don't know whether that's just my own sort of something I've noticed. I don't see loads of people changing them when they're on Scotty Newport. Tiger's another great example. Very rarely changed his putter from that Scotty Newport.
Yeah, man, Scotty's like the golden snitch.
It's almost like that's the final putter that you get to when you're on that.
Rory went from Scotty back to one of those thick-backed ones, the one that's the counter-rotation putters. He's fiddled about with his putters. He's on a Spider, I think, and he's fiddled about with his putters. But then again, he's fiddled about with left below right as well, hasn't he? He did that in the, I think he did an Armies event last year, where he was doing the whole.
He did it at Doral a few years ago, I think.
He just, when you're that good, you got to find marginal gain somewhere, I suppose. But I don't know. I just feel like you can change your driver, you can change your irons, but for me personally, it's just leave the putter in the bag.
I look at DJ though, just running over his stats from last week. Justin Ray put together his usual great stats package, and it's interesting that DJ won, coming fourth in approach play proximity, sixth in strokes gained putting. Fourth in strokes gained putting as well, which is, a huge improvement on what he's been doing the last few events. And then 46th in strokes gained off the tee, which is usually his strong suit. So pretty rare to see someone who's renowned for hitting the ball long and straight be so far down on the, the driving statistics.
But he got that one that was marginally OB, which would have skewed that massively, didn't he? He was like OB by about 6 inches. I would have skewed that a little bit. Sam and I always jest about this, but when you hear the commentary, it's like you can't believe how good he's doing. He's first strokes gained tee to green. He's first this, and he's first in the tournament. You're like, fucking, of course he's. It's just
they did it. They did it on Sunday. So they were reviewing the leaderboard before the leaders went out, and they were talking about Brendan Todd, and they were saying he is first in strokes gained this week. And I was like, well, that's a bloody given. He's leading the tournament after 54 holes. Remarkable insight from the statos there. I don't know, but DJ.
I'm going to ask this question: do we think DJ is genuinely as calm as he appears?
Well, I was just going to ask about his nonchalance. Do you think there's something in that for? I don't think it's calmness. I just don't think he's that aware of what's going on. I suppose when you've won $63 million or $62 million,
he knows if he's winning.
Worried. Yeah, but I don't know. He doesn't seem to compute, does he?
It doesn't. I mean,
it doesn't seem to compute. Like you can see, it's just
he can roll in one for birdie and roll in one for bogey, and it genuinely doesn't show like there's a difference. Now, I'm not going to be on the bandwagon of saying he doesn't know the difference, but in his mentality, it doesn't seem like it just matters not. Just going to go and hit the next ball.
I mean, yeah, without wanting to sound like a broken record again and say it's all about the individual. But I think it genuinely is, like, when it comes to mindset. I mean, you look at how many different mentalities there've been in, like, terms of approaching the game. Lucas Wald put up an interesting sort of explanation back end of last year, I think, when Koepka had just won the WGC, the FedEx St. Jude, was it, out in Memphis before they were heading to the Tour Championship, basically talking about like the differences between Koepka and Rory, who obviously ended up battling it out to that sort of Player of the Season award. And this distinction between like warriors and warriors. And he sees, I think Lucas Wald was saying that he sees Koepka as being more of the kind of warrior type who basically performs suboptimally under like normal conditions, and he actually needs to have some kind of chip on his shoulder or some sort of like motivating factor from an external source, basically the majors and those higher stress environments, in order to bring out his best play. And it's interesting that Koepka played so well in the majors last year. And in fact, he's just played unbelievably well in the majors over the last 3-4 years, and then has fairly ordinary regular events. I mean, he was saying that, he needs to try and take that mindset from the majors to the regular events. Whereas you look at McIlroy, who, Lucas Wald said is basically the other side of the coin. He's more of the warrior who often doesn't sort of handle an overload of stress and expectation all that well. And I guess the key case in point is that he goes on and wins 5 regular season events. I think it was, obviously wins the Tour Championship. He wins in Canada. He wins a few others. And yet when it comes to Portrush, home crowd expectation, he hits it OB on the first. And obviously, I mean, it's something that us as regular golfers won't be able to relate to. But I think there are some people who need an overload of stress really to bring out their best. And there are other people who just need to kind of chill out and kind of, treat it as a bounce game to play their best. And even at the level of the tour players, it varies.
It was like Gio was saying in that pod a few months back, is how do you deal with those interior emotions that when you get the nerves? I mean, McIlroy is playing best in the world week in, week out. And then I don't imagine he's nervous when he stands on the tee for a normal event.
No,
but like Gio was saying, when you get nervous, does that bring excitement and like, yes, I'm going to play the best golf of my life, or does it bring fear?
Physiological, doesn't it? And it becomes
locked down. I mean,
yeah, and I think Koepka
really locks down a bit.
Yeah, I think Koepka does better when he overloads those enzymes or hormones or whatever that are related to anxiety and stress and pressure. He does perform exceptionally well. He performs in fact, I'll go further than that. He performs better, like just objectively better, when there's a lot of expectation on him. Or, the record in the majors certainly suggests that. Whereas a lot of players perform worse. And I guess the secret in golf is figuring out which category you fall into, whether you need to get up for it or whether you need to like sort of dull things down and try and make everything feel as normal as possible. DJ's a weird one though, because maybe he should have won more majors, and maybe he would win more majors if he showed sort of a more active or aggressive mentality. Who knows?
Well, speaking of performing under the gun, Will Gordon, T3rd.
Yeah.
So how much do you know about this guy?
Not very much,
I'll be
actually.
Honest, nothing.
I'd like to be enlightened, Mills.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody did. So obviously, they've suspended
500th odd in the world was my knowledge. 500th odd.
Corn Ferry. They've suspended Corn Ferry till the way you can get through to the PGA Tour till the end of 2021. So essentially, he's got no chance of being on the tour. Is what's gone on. He got a sponsors exemption for this week and has come in and he had to finish in no more or no worse than a 2-way tie for third. And if he did that, he got the points for basically to be on tour for the rest of the year. So he's just come in and he absolutely. He came out of the blocks like a rocket. It was 64, 62 or something like that.
Am I right in saying that he was, and this is where I'm shooting from the hip slightly, but I think he's been hugely overlooked because I think he's come out of college in the same year group as Morikawa, Wolf, Hovland. And I think their meteoric rise in the PGA, they've obviously gone on through sponsors, exemptions, and then gone on quite quickly to getting their full status very fast. Had he had graduated in a different year, and he's always been someone who's floated around kind of slightly under the radar, would be my understanding, and that actually this was no accident. Like, this guy was always going to be making a move to the ascendancy anyway. So I've got a sneaking suspicion this wasn't just sort of like a good 4 days out for Will Gordon.
Flash in the pan.
No, I think I think what the gist of the article I read was that this is obviously sort of, you know, since Sunday we're slightly more enlightened on the topic, is that he's probably going to sort of cash in on this, and you'll see him move into, you know, sort of certainly top 100 and top 50 status in coming 12 months.
I think he's some player. I mean, he came out 66. He was 66, 62. So he's come out, and then suddenly he's into the weekend, made the cut comfortably, and he's into the weekend, and everyone's saying to him, "Look, you got a chance of making tour here." And you know, we just talked about performing under pressure. I mean, what do you do? Saturday he goes out and shoots a 71, and everyone's gone, "Oh, well, that's the end of that." And then on the Sunday, he absolutely ripped it up, and then he
held on to it. He didn't. I mean, like, if you were I don't know, 5-6 years in, bit of a Corn Ferry kind of regular face, and then you've all of a sudden shot 400 and 800 in the opening 2 days of a PGA event, you would expect them to crumble like the Biscuit Man, wouldn't you? And that clearly didn't happen.
What did he shoot on Sunday?
His last day was at 64.
Really?
So he got to the 17th knowing that basically he was on the number for third. So yeah, I'm going to do it. Bogey 17, and he's like, "Fuck, I've just fallen out of it." And then his approach shot, I urge you to look at his last hole. His approach shot on 18 was to about 18 inches. It was unbelievable. And then tapped it in for birdie, and that's it, tied third. Like, what a story!
Seems to be a theme through this pod, because you also then got the other side of the coin with Summer Hayes, which again I watched none of that, but a really interesting one in so much as that's his last professional event, as I understand, or certainly last sort of major scheduled professional event on the Corn Ferry, and has just had an absolute stellar week, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And you wonder whether there's a bit of, you know, kind of removing some of the pressure and the load on the shoulders allows people to play back to the geopod, you know, fearless golf, you know, uninhibited, go out, swing easy, and just sort of, you know, play with complete freedom, and the impact that's, you know, had on his game. Just, yeah, I don't know. Fascinating.
62 on the final day.
Bogeyed the last as well. If he'd have parred that, he obviously would have.
Are you saying he crumbled then?
Well, no. It's just, yeah, obviously it's mightily impressive anyway. And what a way to go out, really. What a way to end your professional career in your hometown.
Yeah, exactly. A great story, isn't it? I wanted to close it off. There's some pointed remarks this week we've seen in the news around ranking points, which I think we use partly as a crutch because it's the best objective way of talking about a player's relative performance, where they're at in their career. But we know the system is slightly flawed. There's been a few people coming out talking about it. I know Andy Sullivan was firing shots about the lack of availability to draw OWGR points on the UK swing, and feeling that the PGA Tour was therefore going to be getting a massive leg up, and therefore probably drives a bigger delta between people who have got status, who are top 50, who are playing in America, versus, you know, the have-nots that are playing European Tour events.
Well, I guess Corn Ferry's counting as well, obviously, to world ranking points. And there was some controversy last week, or perhaps the week before, where McIlroy basically came out and said, you know, people shouldn't be critical. People in Europe shouldn't be critical, because if I was, Francesco Molinari and Tommy Fleetwood, and my livelihood's kind of depended on this thing, and I wanted to push on and become a top 10 player in the world, then I'd be flying out and I'd be quarantining myself in Florida so I could play those PGA Tour events. And I think McIlroy's probably walked that back a little bit since then, but it does beg the question, and it's one that we should really throw out to the listeners, because it would be great to hear all of your input on this. But is that world ranking, is the restart of the world ranking system a few weeks ago just another indicator of how kind of US centric professional golf has become? And okay, obviously it's fair to say that the PGA Tour is the strongest tour, but it's a luxury that, you can play so many different golf events, golf tournaments in America, in one country, whereas in Europe, the logistical challenges that the European Tour are having to confront, and they're doing a fantastic job, by the way, but they're so enormous in scale, and I think it's probably unfair to a lot of European Tour players that they haven't really got control over their own destiny as far as world rankings concerned at the moment.
Do you think this is just another case of the PGA Tour just flexing their muscles because they can?
Well, it's the OWGR though, isn't it? At heart,
that's their thing. So, like, that's like, how do you motivate DJ to go and play in an event? Well, you can't shell out to a guy who's earned $63 million in his career and is earning telephone numbers on endorsements and sponsorship deals, cash, to go and play in events very easily, and it's not a sustainable business model. That the points are their main lever for guaranteeing a certain strength of field, aren't they? That's why the European Tour every tour has essentially a flagship events that gets allowed to award more points than they would do typically. So on the European Tour, that's the BMW Wentworth, I think. That's like the big flagship, and that guarantees, therefore, a stronger strength of field. So if you're turning up and saying, well, we're going to restart the PGA Tour, but we're not going to play world ranking points, they probably are not naive. They know that Brooks, Rory, DJ, you name it, are going to say, okay, thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather just stay put and bunker in at home. And Brooks looks like he's got a pretty nice lifestyle at home with his missus. I can't imagine he's itching to get himself out to Connecticut for a weekend's golf. So
there was an argument that if they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to hold fire until the first major of the year. And from the first major of the year, we're going to start the OWGR points. And actually then you're telling the players, these events are rolling up to the first majors of the year, and if you want to get competitive golf in, you're going to have to come and play it. But we're not awarding points until the majors start. I mean,
I still don't think that they wouldn't play. That's what they want is they want this back with a bang. They want people going. Like, let's be honest, if it was a normal run of course, I don't think we'd have probably talked that much about Harbour Town and the detail we have with River Highlands, the things like that, because the strength of field just typically isn't there. Like, these are events that these guys don't usually play in. I think, what was the one before Harbour Town, the first one?
Colonial.
Back? Yeah, Colonial. I don't think Rory had ever played in that, had he?
Not sure, yeah.
So,
and as you say, they need more than money to get them playing at these events. So
and it would be tough. Here's world ranking points. And if I'm a Brooks or a Rory, I'm like, well, there's no way I'm turning my nose up at, I think, 65 OWGR points out there or something. They're not going to.
And how would Dan Berger
turn that down?
How would Daniel Berger feel as well, having gone on the run of form where, he's won and he's had a couple of other really great finishes? And if they would say, well, sorry, it's not counting towards your world ranking points. It's a tough situation. And again,
why the European Tour hasn't been able to, and obviously there's local quarantining restrictions that have prevented them from doing it. But
look at the diversity of the membership as well at the European Tour. It's like, how do you institute a tournament schedule in Europe that is kind of accessible to a lot of the different members? It's a thankless task. It's a really tough situation. I think the other undercurrent to it all is the fact that, without wanting to turn this into a political pod, because obviously it's not, but how the coronavirus infection rates are spiking once again in the US, and obviously the PGA Tour's fighting really hard to get out in front of it by, buying 1,000 Whoop bands and trying to make sure they quarantine players or get caddies, get caddies and players away from the venues if they're displaying any symptoms or if they haven't had a proper test. Who knows whether it'll turn out in a few weeks that they maybe jump the gun on restarting it a bit. There's too many moving parts, I guess, at the moment to make a definitive statement, but it'd be interesting to hear from you guys out there to see what you think to it all, for sure.
Speaking of Daniel Berger. Do we think there's a bit of handicap protection going on there? He's on for this streak of lowest rounds subpar, and he's obviously seen the course and thought, nah, I'm just going to say I've got COVID and I'll have a little week off.
So you think Daniel Berger's thought, I'm going to just sit
Seriously,
tight here so I can continue my run of form and go out and win?
He's
just waiting for...
Wait, so he didn't play River Highlands?
No.
He pulled out as a precautionary measure because he thought he might have had COVID.
So you think he's holding out for the Rocket Mortgages so he can come back and win 3 times on the
he's
sprint?
seen Rocket Mortgage and thought, right, that's my streak can continue there.
I think your understanding of what motivates top-level PGA professionals is wide of the mark, Tom. But it's about as good as Bruce's understanding of highbrow course architecture, I think.
Jargon.
While we're off on OWGR, Hovland has broken into the World Top 50.
First Norwegian player to do so, isn't he?
Yeah. So I'm not sure about the Norwegian bit. I'm not going to tarnish a whole country just yet. But yeah, Hovland has made the top 50, which is pretty big news.
I mean, I can't think of another Norwegian golfer out there without wanting to sound too disrespectful.
We have a strong followership in Norway. We should be much better followed. They are actually there is quite a strong following out in Norway. So whoever you are, thanks for listening to the pod.
We really appreciate it.
Hovland's an exciting guy, wasn't he? That was always going to happen, and he's a cut above the rest.
What a brilliant persona he's got as well. He's just like so happy-go-lucky.
I think we should continue to bang that drum for Ryder Cup when it happens. That Rory and Hovland is where you heard it first, because it's just the absolute firepower pairing there that we all want to see.
You can imagine it. Rory's eyeballs would pop out, I can't hear you. And then Victor would just be like smiling and giggling in the corner, just like no really anger
happy.
at all.
But then I always think, why does he always look so happy? But then it's like, what's not to be happy about? The guy's literally just finished college in the States. He can pick his schedule. He's one of the best golfers on the planet. And
he won the US Amateur too at Pebble. Cheers.
Yeah. I mean, what's not to be smiling about? He's a good-looking lad. Yeah, he's got everything going for him, hasn't he?
So it takes us on to next week. We've got the Rocket Mortgage to finish it off.
What a shit name for a tour event. I'm sorry. I know that's...
Nothing says naked commercial. Quite like the Rocket Mortgage Classic.
Well, it used to be less commercial. It was the AT&T.
Is that right?
It used to be. I think it was the Quicken Loans and then the AT&T. I mean, they've all been sort of merged into one. It was only the second time it's going to be at this Detroit.
This is where Nate Lashley won last year, wasn't it? Which is quite an emotive story behind his win.
And we're going to go with it's Donald Ross, so we know they're all turtleback greens. They're all going to be rock hard.
This level of
Mills is just trotting out sound bites on this now.
Yeah, just gratuitous mention of course architecture jargon is utterly unwelcome, I think. But yeah, I'd just like to apologise to all of our listeners on behalf of Tom and Sam's conduct. Recently.
Tom's, I think.
Mate, you the one. I'm pretty sure you're the one who said, "Oh, is it a what's the expression? Biarritz Green on the 15th at TPC River Highlands."
It was legitimately a Biarritz Star Green.
The bit that was unlegitimate about that is he pretended to not know what it was for a short moment. Oh, it's a Biarritz. No, we've got the Detroit Club. Anyone know anything much about it?
No,
fuck all. Absolutely fuck all.
Maybe
it looked like a Dulles dishwater event, really.
I've got a feeling it's going to be fairly long, probably 7,000, 7.2, 7.3, quite wide fairways and quite thick rough. Maybe some water. Who knows?
Got every chance, hasn't it? Other than that, we're out on tour a little bit. We're playing some courses over the next few weeks that I'm personally quite excited about. So, very kindly been extended an invitation down to Woking, which I'm very excited to play. That will follow on nicely, Bruce, from your beautiful monologue about golden era course architecture. So I'm very excited.
Mr. John Lowe, fourth hole. Yep, keep it in mind.
Exactly. Where they learn to make fire in course architecture terms. I think hoping to get up to Sillerth, playing a little bit on the northwest coast as well. And we're going to hope to get down to Huntercombe as well, aren't we? So there's a good smattering of kind of classic British courses out there. So we're very excited getting out there. I think that probably just wraps it up for the week. But big thank you to our listeners. We love hearing from each and every one of you. Get in touch, listen, hit subscribe, and don't forget to tell your friends. Adios.
Tell your friends.
Bye-bye.
Watch this.